Brought to you by concordiatheology.org, bringing you resources that support the vigorous life of the mind in service of the gospel of Christ.
Welcome to Tangible, Theology Learned and Lived. We're exploring the ways in which theology permeates all aspects of life. Through conversations with faculty at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis, we will challenge you to deepen your theology and live out your faith in Christ. I'm your producer and host, Jessica Bordelot. I'll talk with a variety of professors on a variety of topics, something different every episode, but all pointing to the intersection of faith and daily life, because it's tangible, theology learned and lived. Our role as Christians in the world is defined by the relationships in which God has put us. We are called to the vocation of neighbor, citizen, coworker, friend, and within families. The vocation of being a parent or having a parent is vital, but is not easy. Today we'll discuss the faith formation that happens in families, and then, because it's Father's Day, we'll talk about some courageous dads. Here to discuss are Dr. Joel Biermann and Dr. Mart Thompson. Dr. Joel Biermann has been a professor of systematic theology here at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis since 2002. Among his areas of interest is the role of Christians in the world. He's written publications and books about politics, ethics, virtue, and today's topic, vocation. In that vein, he's written the book Courageous Fathers from the Bible and the Lutheran Hour Bible study called Fatherhood. Dr. Biermann, thank you for being here.
Always a pleasure, Jessica.
Dr. Mart Thompson is Associate Professor of Practical Theology and Director of the SMP program, the Specific Ministry Pastor Program, here at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis. He's also the director of the Family Discipleship Initiative, and his newly published book is Family Discipleship with Christ, a map of God's promises for congregations and families. Dr. Thompson, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Jessica.
So in a conversation about parenting, I think it's legit to ask each of you about your personal experience. Do you guys have kids?
I have 3, and then I also have 10 grandchildren and 1 on the way. We're very blessed in that regard.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
No, we're in the same boat. I have 3 kids and 11 grandkids. So.
Nice.
Yep.
All right. So, Dr. Thompson, in the research that you've done for the book that you just wrote and some of the initiatives you're part of, you wrote about the role of parents in the faith development and children, specifically within the home.
Yes. One of the emphases in the book is showing how the home has a really important role to play in faith development, because they oversee what we would say is the formation of faith in the lives of children and the home itself, in partnership with the congregational ministry, which often focuses well on education. And you need both, and that's what the book is about. That's why that subtitle says it is this map of God's promises in both congregations and homes. Yes.
Yeah, and that's exactly the way Luther even talked about it. You know, we always hear, well, the small catechism was meant for fathers to use in the home to train their kids, but it was never meant to be a substitute for what was going on in the church. It's always the congregation working with the family together in this real nice cooperation kind of a thing.
Right.
Both are involved. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the main emphasis of the structurally for the book. And then there's another emphasis, and that is on vocation centered in Christ. And we can talk about this at some point if you'd like. New creational wisdom, following God's design as He's created us to live, but also doing that in the mercy of God, because we live in this broken world. And when we talk about fathers, we'll talk about that as fathers need, and in fact, Joel, you did a great job. And when you talked about I was just refreshing my memory on your book. I hadn't read it in a while.
You read it, though?
I read it.
I read it
Mart. Years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
And but you end with the father of the prodigal.
Yeah.
And you talk about how he's not really an example for us to follow. He is our Father in heaven.
Yeah.
And all of us fathers and mothers need that loving, accepting, forgiving, because we live in and we have sin and brokenness too. So.
Yeah.
So you talked about partnering with congregations. And in a previous episode, we talked a little bit more in detail. You can find that in our archives.
Yes.
But as we talk today about the roles of parents in the home, in what ways would that be considered family discipleship? That's a term that I've heard you use.
Family discipleship is specifically defined in terms of a partnership between the ministry and the vocations in the home, and the ministry of the church and the vocations of parents. And so that is why we use that term family discipleship today. And we have kind of an agreed upon definition for that in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. God's children being both parents and adults, working in partnership with the congregation in raising children in the faith. So that's family discipleship.
And discipleship's a good term. I've even still hear recently people raising questions about, well, discipleship, that's an evangelical way of talking, and Lutherans don't talk about discipleship. But it's good to remember this is a good scriptural word, and there's nothing wrong with making disciples. It's kind of Jesus' idea. Yeah. And so I'm a huge advocate for defending discipleship as language that we use. And ministry is a very vague word, because there's those who want to say, well, that's the pastoral office, or no, ministry is just doing gospel stuff. And so ministry has become just a really vapid word, and it's not super helpful, and people bring all kinds of wrong connotations with it. So I think it's a smart move to talk about discipleship and the idea that we are here to make disciples. And so I would argue that one of the key goals of a Christian parent is, I want to raise kids to be disciples of Christ.
Yes.
That's what I'm here to do.
Right. Yeah.
And we shouldn't be apologetic about that. We should be really blunt about it. That's my job. That's
Right.
what I'm here for.
Yes.
And that's what you're about too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, Dr. Biermann, you're talking about the ways that is our vocation as parents.
Yeah.
And so within the family, we then are equipped, or we are given the okay, that it's okay that we are part of that faith formation, even though we don't have all the answers.
Right.
I think that's sometimes a challenge as parents, because I don't know everything. I don't know enough.
You don't have to have an MDiv or even a certification from the seminary or a colloquy. You don't have to be in the pastoral office to do the work of making a disciple. And this is why the term vocation is so really critical here, because vocation reminds us that God calls us into specific tasks which are peculiar to each of us based on where we're born, who we're married to, where we're living, our status in life. All these things impact my vocation. But the vocation then is specific to me and my context, but my goal is the same, to make a disciple. A pastor goes about that task differently than a father does. And when a father's at home training his kids or reading the Bible to him or quizzing him on the fourth commandment, he's not being the pastor. He's not, now I'm in the pastoral office. No, you're father office. That's your vocation. You see, a father's better than a pastor on many levels because he's the father. He's got a different relationship, and he needs to exploit that. That's the value of keying in on the family part of it.
Right. No, thank you for saying that. The other side of that is we have to be careful. As he was saying, we shouldn't over-expect from parents to know, the intricacies of a lot of the doctrine of the faith in a way that a pastor is going to know that, or a Lutheran school teacher might be instructed in how to do that. So we want to let each do their vocation well.
There are things that only a father can do. And no, it doesn't matter how great the pastor is, how loving he is, how compassionate he is, how much he invests, he can't be the father.
Right. And so what congregations need to do in those situations, because I get this question a lot, as you might guess.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought you're only talking about, two-parent families. No, I'm talking about families the way that they are, but you have to account for what is missing there in how you seek to minister to those children. In our congregation, we have this wonderful young man who's, I think he's around 5th or 6th grade, who just showed up at our church. We go to an inner city church. And he has just taken to the congregation. And we then, as kind of the family of faith, now all together he sits with different families in the church.
So he just showed up some Sunday morning?
He just showed up. He's from the neighborhood down at Holy Cross.
That is so cool.
And he was just baptized a few weeks ago.
Oh, man. That's so
cool. He's there every time the door is open. And occasionally he's able to, I should say, drag his parents there, but he comes on his own. But the congregation has had to account for the fact that he still needs that kind of nurture that a home provides. And we're never going to be able to do that like a traditional home can. but we can do what we can do, as I said, the family of faith in that place.
Yeah, God always works with exceptions, and this is your point. So He doesn't have a dad at home taking care of him. What's going on? This negates everything. No, it doesn't, because God works in His merciful way, and there's always going to be exceptions. But is there God's ideal of mom and dad raising His kids? Of course.
That's right.
And when you don't have that, doesn't mean everything's thrown out the door and you've got to start over from scratch. No, you need to accommodate, which is exactly what you're doing.
And at the same time, as you're raising your children, no matter what your family configuration might be, you want to teach your children God's ideal, the way God designed us to live.
Yeah.
And so you have to balance those things, or just make those distinctions, I should say, about meeting people where they're at, but also continually pointing them to our Creator's design for how to live well in the world that He has created.
That's right. The Creator's design is the right way, and you don't make an exception to the new rule.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I was rereading your book and saw something else that struck me there that I thought was really helpful, and that is, I think it was your writing about the official.
Okay.
To where we don't know a lot about him, but what we do know is he did go back home after Jesus, healed his child, and this had a positive impact in his family because he was setting this example for his home of being this person who trusts the words of Jesus.
Yeah.
And acting with integrity. And so, yeah, it's important for him to oversee certain practices in his home and to orient the home through the lived experience that they have, because this is where parents have, all this influence, which pastors don't have over the homes of their parishes. But he is also really setting this example that the children will follow when they see their dad having integrity, where they see him not having one public image and one private image at home, where they recognize that he personally trusts in God and he personally holds Christ as his Savior. That has a tremendous impact on handing down the faith. In fact, according to Christian Smith, in his later research, would say that it's those kind of that authentic, natural way of being in the home that has the most impact on handing down the faith to the next generation.
Yep. Yeah, and this is kind of a more fundamental principle at work underneath here. You've got the way that God has established things to work, the ideal, if you want to call it that, the gold standard. I don't even like that language because it makes it sound like it's some kind of lofty thing that only a few attain. But no, there's this way that God wants the world to work. And we in the church need to always teach that. That's what you were getting at earlier.
Right.
We should teach God's design for the family. We should teach God's design for the home. We should not back off of that because somebody might be offended. What if they're not in a situation? No, this is how God wants it to be. And you know as well as I do that often the people who are in those anomaly situations want somebody to remind them of the truth.
Exactly.
Because they said this needs to be taught. And so we need to teach that without backing off of that. But then we also need to recognize that here's the principle is God's grace always kicks in. And there's this profound mercy that God has for the things that aren't the way they're supposed to be. It's not like you didn't measure up, we're done with you, blow you off. That's not how the church works. We always extend grace for the kid who wanders in without the family, or for the single mother, or for the father. And you can go back to Timothy, and who's got his mother, right. Lois and Eunice, and his mother and grandmother. And no doubt, no dad mentioned. Probably right. He's an unbelieving, Greek from what we can surmise.
Correct, yeah.
But yet God works, and God can do that.
This is the thing that I learned most from the book. The best thing that Christian educators can do to serve childhood faith, that equipping the parents equips the kids, being that courageous father and that courageous mother.
That's exactly right. So, so when Christian Smith in his later research was asked about this, is what can the church do? The most important thing they can do is, and not that there's not a role for youth ministry or Sunday school or confirmation, but is helping those parents be better disciples of Jesus Christ themselves for their own relationship with God and their own vocational service and whatever it might be. And then they're better equipped to carry out this vocation. And as I argue in the book, God has kind of instilled that in parents. They want what's best for their children. And so a Christian parent, that means they want them to know that same hope in Christ that they have as a disciple of Christ.
And I wouldn't say you argue it in your book. I would say you lovingly display it as a healthy option.
Okay.
That's different.
Argue,
That's
no,
different.
it's not. Argue just means make a case.
Just wait. Dr. Mart Thompson, thank you so much for being here.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you for asking me, Jessica.
So since it is Father's Day, I thought we would talk about your book, Courageous Fathers of the Bible.
Thanks for reading it.
We'll pick a few fathers in the Bible and talk about them. I look forward to Mother's Day when we'll do the same thing and find some courageous mothers. You haven't written that book yet, but if you don't, I will.
Okay, do that. That'd be a good thing. Yeah, this was the first published book I had is Courageous Fathers for the Bible, and it's interesting because I was approached to write the book, and so that's why they had a book in mind. They needed somebody to write it, so I got asked, "Would you write this?" And so I said, "Sure."
Of the fathers that you talked about in your book, which is one that stands out to you as significant?
Yeah, David always stands out to me as significant because he's kind of, we would think David's great guy, man after God's own heart, but he was a bad father in many ways.
Tell me more.
Well, Absalom is his son, and Absalom's a mess up. And whose fault is he? David raised him. And when Absalom is an adult, Absalom is doing things he shouldn't do, and David doesn't intervene. He doesn't take action. He doesn't do what he should do. And so he's even with an adult son, he's still neglecting his role as father, and he's doing a bad job. So is David a great man? Sure. Is he a good father? No. And he's not a great father. And so it's interesting to recognize that these things are not equivalents. So I guess why he stands out to me is I think the key here for me is that fatherhood is its own vocation, and it needs to be taken seriously. And just because you're a success in your work or in your education or in your marriage does not make you a success as a father. It's a unique vocation that needs to be taken seriously in its own right. And so if you have been given the task of father, that's your vocation, father. And it doesn't mean what else you're doing matters, because it really doesn't. What matters is what kind of father am I being?
Do you think there's a hierarchy of vocations then?
There is, but it's not like it's laid out scripturally, and you can't say, well, this, and you work your way down the list. I don't think it's that simple. I think the way that vocation works is God puts us in situations in life where we have responsibilities. And I like Robert Benne's term, places of responsibility. And so when you're thinking about the hierarchy, is the question, the kind of criteria I often use, and I've heard others use this as well, is what is the task I've been given that no one else is able to do right now? And so I'm the only husband my wife has. I'm the only father my kids have. I'm the only grandfather my kids have right now. And so I need to carry those tasks out with a definite priority that only I can do. And so that's helpful. And so I don't know that you can't say, well, the father then trumps everything all the other times. No, there are times when pressing things that have to be done, and the kids are part of that, and you work all that out. So the key is having the conversations and understanding that I am working to fulfill all my vocations, and I can't do just one of them to the exclusion of all the others, and keeping them all in the right kind of balance with each other is not easy, but we just keep on working at it. But the critical thing, I guess, the point I want to make with the book, and I think it is worth still hearing, even though it's an older book, is that fatherhood is a sacred vocation from God, and you need to take it seriously.
What are characteristics of a father who's being faithful in his vocation?
Yeah, so obviously this is a man who is intent on following Christ in his own life, a man who takes seriously the call of discipleship in his own life. So he wants to die to himself. He wants to take up his cross and follow Christ. He wants to live for the sake of others. He wants to be a man of integrity. He's keeping the Ten Commandments. He's keeping the Decalogue. He goes to church. He honors his wife. He loves his wife. And he shows his kids what it looks like to honor and love your wife and to sacrifice for her. And so he's setting an example in all of his doings. But I guess what has really come to mind for me, and this is over years of thinking about this, years of counseling parents and doing family counseling in the parish, and just so many different situations and heartbreaking situations and things I've learned in my own experience. If I could boil it down to the single most important word for successful parenting, it's simply consistency. and to be consistent so that what I say and what I do are the same. And what I claim to live in my life is what I'm actually trying to do. And it doesn't mean I'm perfect. It doesn't mean I get it right all the time. But what I profess on Sunday morning is what I'm living out Wednesday evening and Saturday morning and all the time. It's who I am. Because when a kid hears mom and dad say one thing or profess one thing and then sees clear evidence that it's not real for them, it all blows up. And nothing matters, because then the kid realizes, oh, this is just a game. This is a pretense. Church is part of life. It's not all of life. Following Jesus is a nice way to talk, but it's not really what's driving life. There are other things that matter more. And so the most important thing you can do as a parent is to be consistent. Yes, consistent in following your rules. Yes, consistent in enforcing your rules. But far more important is consistent in your own life, that what you live and what you profess line up. Integrity is the catch-all.
How do I do that? That sounds totally intimidating.
If
I'm not perfect at home,
no. It's not at all about
that?
perfection. You know that, and I appreciate the softball question, because this is not an intimidating thing, because no one's demanding perfection of you. No one's demanding that you're going to be getting it all right or you're going to follow Jesus perfectly. Nobody can. Nobody can follow Christ perfectly all the time. And so what do you do then? Well, you live like the Christian. And so when you mess up, what do Christians do? They admit it, they confess, and they get forgiveness. And so when you as a father mess up and you lose your temper, what do? You tell your kids you're sorry. You confess. It's one of the more difficult things for a father to do, okay, I'm going to go to my 6-year-old and confess and ask for his forgiveness. Yep. That's exactly what you're going to do. And that's hugely educational. It's one of the defining moments of a child's upbringing and of your parenting, because you have taken responsibility for your failure, you're owning it, and you're seeking their forgiveness. And for them to say, it's okay, Dad, I forgive you, it's going to feel awesome for you to hear that. But for them to say that, that's so important for them. You're not perfect, but you're doing it the way God has taught you to do it. And you're living within God's reality. That's what makes it go.
And very Lutheran, too. Luther wrote about speaking absolution and confession within the home. It even says women and children on their way in the field should confess and absolve each other. What an example in the home.
It is. It's a beautiful thing. And see, this is what we were talking about earlier. This does not make you a pastor. It doesn't mean you're encroaching into the pastoral office or, you're stepping over your bounds. No, this is your vocation in the family to speak gospel to one another. And that gospel is a word of forgiveness. Oh, you messed up and you hurt me. You're right. I forgive you. And then a mom can say to her child, and so does Jesus. She can do that. She doesn't have to run him off to the pastor to get the absolution, because she has the keys of the office of the keys to do that in her vocation as mom.
Is there a dad in your life that is an inspiration to you that has explained these characteristics that you want to embody?
My dad did his vocation well and still does. He's still living. And he still continues to set an example of this is what it means to follow Christ with humility and with seriousness. And the best gift he gave me was the absolute consistency between what he said and my mom too. And my mom died now 10 years ago or more. And so I've lost her example. But what my mom and dad did was what they said and what they lived were right down the line. There was no game playing. Were they perfect? No. My dad's very taciturn, very quiet. He's, doesn't say a lot. I didn't hear a lot of effusive praise from either one of them growing up. But boy, I knew it. And I knew where I stood with them. And I knew their absolute commitment to me. And I knew that they took following Christ seriously. So I took it seriously. There was no disjunction there. So I learned a ton from him. And I learned a ton from my father-in-law. My wife's father was a tremendous man. Both of them pastors, and both of them very committed, very different. Their personalities were very different. Their ways of doing ministry were very different. But I learned a ton from him of, again, the consistency. And my wife will say the same thing. What my father-in-law said, and he has died as well, but what he said and what he did were right on the line. They lined up. And my mother-in-law is part of that as well. So they're all in that consistency. Consistency, consistency, consistency. This is what it's all about. And they both set examples of that and of the dying to self and living for the sake of others and following through on things. And yeah, the compassion and the tenderness and spending time and listening and spending time with us. My parents spent all kinds of time with us, usually doing jobs, doing work, but we were doing things together. Meal time, we ate meals together, just standard. There's never a debate about it. It's just what you did. And so we always ate meals together. We just lived life together. And so the consistency was there.
Mm-hmm. Dads who are listening, they hear a way that you've been raised beautifully and the way that you've been able to emulate that in your family, and they don't feel like they are doing that. How can they learn?
Yeah, and it's never too late to start. And this is one of the things I saw when I was a parish pastor is I would have parents come in and dads who were later converts in life and had messed up big time. And, it's too late for me. My kids are grown. No, it's never too late. Even if your kids are all grown and are raising their own family, for you to start getting your act together and saying, I messed up. I need to do this better. And having those kinds of conversations, that can have an enormous impact. It is never too late. The kids are desperate to hear the father's affirmation. And even if they don't get it until they're in their 50s, to hear that affirmation from their father can have a profound impact. So it's never too late. It's never too late for you to start doing what God calls you to do and to pick yourself up and go again and go again and go again. So I messed up. I've been a bad father. All right, you have. Own it, confess it. Now start doing things right. It's never too late. And again, the standard is not perfection. You don't have to become some kind of super dad. And one of the things that really comes out in my book, In Courageous Fathers, is these fathers are all mess-ups. Every one of them has some failure, and sometimes fatal, really significant flaws. David stands out. Abraham, they all. Not one of them is perfect. Mm-hmm. And that's the point. There's not this standard of, wow, I have to get to there. Well, you strive for it, you're working for it, but no one's going to get there. But we're all in process. The key is living in the grace that God has for you along the way.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that aspect of your book, that it wasn't just the fathers who were displaying something, but the fathers who were missing something.
Yeah.
And that is an example as well.
Yeah.
Especially Jacob. He stinks.
Oh, man, Jacob
You
is
have a favorite son? No, what's up with that?
No,
You give him special clothes?
No, I agree.
Not a fan of Jacob.
No, I agree. And in fact, someone, you asked me my favorite father, and I was thinking about this the other day for some reason. So I was thinking, if someone would ask me who's my favorite character in the Bible, well, I'll go Old Testament, New Testament. So Old Testament, and I came to this realization. So I'll do a favorite on this one for you, even though you didn't ask.
You got it. See,
my favorite character in the Old Testament is Esau.
Okay.
And that's so weird because Esau, the hairy dude who's, the ruffian and guy who sells his birthright. What a loser. But see, Esau is legit. He's hungry. He comes in. Who cares about this birthright? I want food. And so he's a guy, get things done. And then he regrets it later. Yeah, fair enough. You screwed up. But see, what's so cool about Esau is, so Jacob runs off, does his thing, and we hear all about Jacob. We hear nothing about Esau. But then when Jacob comes home, he's getting ready to meet Esau, his twin brother, and he's terrified, as he should be. But then Esau's reaction when he meets Jacob is just one of the most beautiful moments, I think, in the Old Testament, because he greets him and embraces him, and he forgives him. Wow. Esau lives the gospel, and I love it. I love it. I think that's so cool.
Thanks for redeeming Esau.
Yeah,
I love that.
It. Yeah, it's
you
cool.
You said a New Testament example.
Well,
as well?
I probably go with Paul because I'm a Paul guy. I love Paul.
Why?
Because Paul is just he tells it straight. He is serious about following Christ, and he wants to teach people into the fullness of following Christ. But he knows God's grace because he's fundamentally flawed, and he's just the stellar example of what the gospel looks like, and getting law and gospel straight and not negating them or pitting them against each other, but living the reality of following Christ. Paul exemplifies it. Mm-hmm. I love Paul.
Who is a mother in the Bible that you admire?
Yeah, well, there are so many mothers. Mothers are so, unheralded because they're the ones who are just there sticking it out, doing it, and loving. And mothers have this infinite capacity of compassion and care. I'll get
I wish I was how you describe.
No. You have it. I'll get to my favorite here in a bit. But let me first say this about mothers, since this is Father's Day. But I want to talk about mothers too. That we know that one of the curses is that there will be pain in childbirth. This is in Genesis 3. So why? Because this is the peculiar role that a mom has. She gets to bring life into the world, and that she has this pain in childbirth. I'm persuaded that the pain that a mother carries for her children is unique to a mother that a father doesn't have, and she never lets go of that. She has a role and a relationship to her child that a father doesn't have because she bore that child under her heart for 9 months, and she never lets go of that. And so even when an adult kid messes up, it hurts the mother more than it hurts the father. I'm convinced of this. I'm convinced that there's a pain that a mother bears for her children and an anxiety she carries for them her whole life that a father doesn't. And we're not nearly as compassionate. It's not wired into us the same way it is for a mother. So a mother has this, and I think that's one of the peculiar pains or that a mother endures. And so you have that. It's in you. And whether you live it out perfectly the way you think you should, it's in you. You have this capacity that is built in. I'm convinced of that.
No, I agree. I think the curse had nothing to do with giving birth. It's what parents have to do to continue to let go of their kids for the rest of your life.
Right.
That hurts.
And it's harder for a mom than
day.
it is for a dad. It's absolutely harder for a mother. I see it with my wife all the time, even with our grandkids now. It's just she would grieve as the kids got older because she's letting go of these things. And me, I'm like, I can't wait for them to get older. You know. So,
I'll tell them not to listen to this episode.
That's right.
At least not before Father's
right.
Day, and they buy you your gift.
Yeah. So my favorite mothers, I really appreciate. You know, I mentioned Lois and Eunice before. You know, they were there for Timothy. They became Christians, and they raised Timothy to know this, and it had the impact. And so dads are essential. But even if a dad's messing up or dad's not around, can God still work? He absolutely can. And Eunice and Lois prove it.
What have you learned by being a father?
Oh, man, you learn humility about how much you don't know and about how much you mess up, and you start to examine your own life and realize what a schlock you are and how far short you fall. And so you see your own sin, I think, much more clearly, and it gets magnified much more dramatically because you think about the impact you're having on them and you don't want to mess them up. And so it makes you more humble, I think.
The final question on this show is always this: what do you want our listeners to remember?
I want our listeners to remember that God's grace is absolutely there for you. And that's why I saved the story of the prodigal last. I make the argument in my book that the prodigal son, the father of the prodigal son, is a bad example of fathering because he does things he shouldn't do. His son comes and says, hey, I want the inheritance. He gives it to him. Who's going to do that? That's bad advice. Don't do that. But so he's not an example of what you should do as an exemplary father. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is be a father like this. No, the point of the story is this is the kind of father you have. You have a father who's going to wait for you, and he's ready to forgive you no matter what. And so when you drop the ball as an earthly father, and you will, your heavenly Father is always there to forgive. Always there. That's the gospel. And that's why that has to be the last story in the book, because the gospel is what we all need to hang on to. And the only thing that gets us through are many failures.
There it is. That's it for today. Thanks
right.
for being on the show, Dr. Biermann.
My pleasure.
I want to tell you about a free resource we produced called Befriending Neighbors. It's a downloadable video curriculum that equips congregations to serve and empower immigrants. The videos are real-life stories of Lutheran volunteers who work together to walk alongside immigrants in their community. Thanks to a generous grant, we are able to offer Befriending Neighbors for free. I recommend it even if just to watch the videos on your own, because the stories are powerful. You can find Befriending Neighbors at concordiatheology.org. It's under the tab Resources. I'm your producer and host, Jessica Bordolo. Join me next time when we talk about the intersection of theology and daily life, because it's tangible. Theology learned and lived.